attempt to assess, diagnose, or treat any mental health or illness condition. Please consult your physician, psychiatrist, or psychotherapist for personal matters.
Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inner Voice Show. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, psychotherapist and author and the originator of the Awareness Integration Theory. Hello to Sean, our director in our studio. This is a show about what matters most in our life, our mind, our thoughts, feelings, actions, relationships, and our fulfillment in this beautiful journey of life. Today, I will share a tip of the week with you about how we can connect through our communication or destroy each other and the relationships through our communication. Then I chat with Marcia Naomi Berger. She leads dynamic marriage and communication workshops and is a popular speaker at conferences. As a licensed clinical social worker with a private psychotherapy practice, she's taught continuing education classes for therapists at the University of California, Berkeley Extension, Alliant University, and other universities and professional associations. She's the author of Marriage Meeting for Lasting Love. And her latest book, which we're going to be talking about today, it's called Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love. It's really literally A to Z. So please subscribe to my YouTube channel, podcast, and connect with me through any of the social medias. I love to hear from you. Ask your questions, give me your comments, and I love to hear from you. But first, here's the tip of the week. Here's the tip of the week. Here's a way you can talk to promote effective communication or destroy the message, the relationship, and the person's character. If the communication is not intentional and it is only reactive, the possibility of destruction is much higher. I've been talking to many people this week who unintentionally and reactively have destroyed their relationship to a point of no return. A father who has a certain standard, and when his teenage son does not listen to him and does whatever his peers want him to do, he blasts in anger and attacks every part of his son's character, resulting in destroying his son's self-esteem. Or a woman who's so angry with her husband for not giving her what she needs at home after telling him for 10 years that she starts screaming so hard that the husband ends up leaving the house and blames her for what does not work in their marriage. So when you only concentrate on what you have to say and what you need to gain, the mode of communication becomes like a monologue, a one-way directed conversation only to get your desired outcome without any consideration toward the other person's feelings or needs. This way of communicating may be fine for one-time interactions when you're only needing to obtain a service. However, for long-lasting relationships, there needs to be a dialogue with both people's needs, desires, and emotions being considered. Emotional reactivity does not promote communication. The message gets lost in heat of the moment. It is important for you to become aware of your style of communication. So let's observe together. How do you enter a dialogue? You do it in a positive, in a negative, in a kind way, in a derogatory way, in a provocative way. Do you begin with curiosity about the person you're communicating with, or you don't practically care, or you have assumptions about the person or the group you're talking to, and you go based on that assumptions, or whatever else that shows up for you? Are you curious and in wonder of what their needs, emotions, and thoughts are? Or you plan to tell them what their thoughts and emotions and needs should be? Do you consider whether they're ready to hear you, receive you, and cooperate with you? Do you assume negative thoughts, intentions, and emotions from them towards you? Are you aware of your full intention when sharing your thoughts and emotions with them? Are there any hidden intentions there, like I want to be loved, or I want to get my point across, and I just want to get what I need? What is all of the intentions that are there? Does your style of communication consider how you impact them by saying it in a particular way? Do you know what style of communication works best for the person you're talking to? Do you know them enough? Do you consider, based on their reactions, their body reactions, and what it might be? Do you state what you want in a demanding way, or do you request your want and ask them if they could offer it to you? Do you get frustrated or angry if they say no? Or do you respect their answer and negotiate so that you both are satisfied? For more observational and communication skills, go to my book, Life Reset, The Awareness Integration Path to Create the Life You Want. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and I am excited to be with Marcia Naomi Berger. She's a licensed clinical social worker, leads a dynamic marriage and communication workshops, and is a popular speaker at conferences. As a clinical social worker with a private psychotherapy practice, she has taught continuing education classes for all the therapists in the University of California, Berkeley extensions, Alliant University, and for various professional associations. While she's employed by the city and the county of San Francisco, she held senior level positions in child welfare, alcoholism treatment, and psychiatry. She's also served as a lecturer on the clinical faculty at the University of California School of Medicine, and as the executive director of the Jewish Family and Children's Services of the East Bay. She is the author of Marriage Meetings for Lasting Love, and her latest book, which we're going to be talking about today, is Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me on it, Foojan. I'm glad to be here.
Well, you talk a lot about marriage. So this book was very interesting when the title says an A to Z. I didn't take it as literally it's A to Z. And as I was going through your book, I'm like, oh, that's fascinating. That's so interesting that you actually you go through A to Z. So we go each alphabet has its own things that are right under it, the sub-classifications that are under it. So how did you come up with this style of literally doing A to Z?
I am a literal kind of a person. I tend to take things literally and probably think literally. And I know there are so many books out already about marriage, how to get married, to stay happily married, and a lot of great books. And mostly they discuss one or two ideas. I wanted a book that's really thorough. So I came up with the A to Z idea, where under each letter of the alphabet, I could take a couple of ideas, like A is for ambivalence, A is for anxiety, A is for awesome. Remember, you have a lot to give to a relationship, and go through the alphabet. B is for boundaries, B is for be yourself. Everyone else is taken already, said Oscar Wilde. So that's how the book came about.
I think it's a great, great idea. And as I was going through, these are beautifully written, short descriptions, and then even give you clues and what to do, and very practical ways that you have shared with people and the readers in looking at. And I get it that a lot of it has to do more with like attitude changes, because you're looking at every single thing and seeing these things might come up in your marriage or in your dating. So the part about how to choose a mate, and then what to expect about going into the relationship, moving on, and then in these bits, there's a lot more about how to reframe your way of being in a marriage per se. Right?
Right, yeah, and it's a big change from being single, where we're living a fairly self-centered kind of existence, to marriage, where to make it good, of course, we have to take care of ourselves, but we also have to live in the awareness of our partner's interests, expectations, wants, and needs, as well as our own, which is really a transformation.
So throughout the years, I'm a therapist, just like you have been doing couples therapy for about 30 years almost. And, we see a lot. And I've obviously experienced it in my own marriage. What is it that you experience to be the most important factor that somebody who wants to get married, so let's say they're single, they're beginning to look at who I'm going to choose to marry, and then, going through the process, what are your experience and your knowledge about that? What would you like?
Foojan, that's a hard question, because there are so many important aspects. The first thing I thought of was what we were just talking about, to be able to transcend ourselves and our own, naturally selfish tendencies, to gain that awareness that there's him, there's me, and there is also the relationship. So putting the relationship right up there along with him and me as almost like a third entity. I think it's really, really important to get beyond what I want, what he wants, and what's good for both of us.
That's so accurate. It's the concept of whatever happens in me, it's about me, and then what I offer within the middle part. There's a middle part which is the us, which is the marriage itself. And I think, like you said, when each person really sees and takes responsibility for that part, then it becomes much easier to choose what you want to put in here, and how it goes back and forth, and how I'm going to be responsible for the middle.
That's right. And we're both therapists, as you said. We both probably love working with couples. I know I do, and I suspect you do, or you wouldn't keep doing it. And so often, I'm sure we both notice how they come in pointing the finger at each other. This one has to change. And eventually, if the therapy is working well and they're working well with it, it becomes, what can I do? What can I do? It's because what one person does affects the relationship in all kinds of ways. And instead of if only he or she would change, we know how hard it is to change. It's impossible, basically, to deliberately change somebody else. It's hard enough to change ourselves. And that is that's the joy and the beauty of therapy, when it does help us to learn what we are contributing, for better or worse, to the relationship, and to gain that self-awareness and know that we can change. It's your fault to, I contributed to this situation too, and I can behave in a way, instead of blaming, for example, I can ask for what I want kindly and respectfully, and I can learn to compliment my partner when he gives me what I've asked for, and to also accept that we don't get everything we want, so it won't always happen, but I've done my part by being my true, authentic self in the relationship, and in a kind, respectful way to both of us.
When you use the word through authentic self, it's interesting that many times the notion that I get is that when somebody wants to share their true authentic self when they are upset or their needs have not been met, they consider the way that their judgment is showing up is their true authentic self. So it's like, well, I'm just being honest. And then, there's a blast that happens. And then it's like, well, I'm just being honest.
Right. Yeah. I can't stand you. I'm just being honest.
Right. And then obviously at that moment, this is not what we mean by true authentic self. So can you explore and expand on that sentence?
Okay. So let's say deep down inside, we are nice, kind people. We have souls and we want to be nice, be respectful. So being our authentic self does not mean having no filter. We do not have to say everything that occurs to us. We all have times, say people can be annoying. So you marry the person who annoys you the least. You find that person. I think we need to accept that there are going to be times that we don't feel so loving towards our husband or anybody. But if we think about the relationship while we're being our authentic self, how can I express myself? And if I'm too angry to be kind and respectful, I'll get out of the room, let them process it for a while. Because what good does it do to blast some angry words that you may regret saying and that your partner may remember for a long time? It's going to be creating distance instead of the kind of closeness that both of you want.
So it's also looking at the overall intention you have and whether you're going to get that intention or not, and then how you communicate will bring that into, it'll land it or it will really destroy it. That's what I'm also hearing from you.
Yes, I like the way you put that, because it struck me after when I do workshops for couples as well as for single women, and one of the women said after the workshop during an evaluation kind of discussion, she said, I learned how to communicate with intention instead of without intention. And that was years ago, and it stays in my mind. Communicating with intention is just so important, so easy to forget to do, and so important to know how well it goes when we do communicate with intention.
Many times as I've worked with couples, I go right into beginning of the sessions, I go right into just communication techniques. And many of them at first is like, no, but these are under all the underlying issues. And one of the things I truly believe is I can't get to the underlying issues before communication is set up, because how are you going to even share the underlying issues if you can't even share simple techniques? Like if you're going to teach somebody cooking, you got to first know what the tastes are, and maybe you could just do omelet first before you do gourmet stuff, right? So what are your thoughts and experience about that, where people really do want to get to the underlying issues, but they don't have the skills of the elementary stuff first, and you can sense it in their way that they're communicating with each other?
Yes, I agree with you totally. And educating them is very, very important. I actually have charts where I show how different ways couples communicate when disagreement exists, from Virginia Satir, one of the founders of family and couple therapy. So they can find out, immediately they can begin to learn to notice if they're into blaming or placating or being reasonable instead of paying attention to feelings, or whether they're irrelevant and change the subject, or make a joke instead of dealing with whatever matter is at hand. And ideally, what we want to do is help them move from a dysfunctional way of communicating, the way that creates distance, to congruent communication, where people are expressing their authentic selves, but in a way, let's say, that is respectful both to themselves and to their partner. I also have a chart with how to use I statements instead of you statements, which helps people to learn to tune into themselves and self-awareness about what they really want and what they need. And it's kind of funny about the I statements, because it is easy for people to misconstrue an I statement and say, I feel you're being obnoxious, rather than my feelings are hurt by the way you just spoke with me. And that would be more like an I statement.
Yes, many people take I statement as I can say whatever I want, and as long as I begin the process with an I, then the rest.
Right. Just like the I'm being authentic example you gave.
Yeah. So when part of your book also deals with dating process. So what are your suggestions for dating?
For dating, self-awareness, of course, is very important. Notice how you're feeling about dating. It's easy to get all stressed about dating. So I would say if you're dating with marriage in mind, your first date, your second date, relax, have fun, get to know the person. Of course, if we think this person who's sitting across the table from me at a restaurant or wherever you are, is he the one? Is this going to be the one I'm going to be with for the rest of my life? You're going to notice every little flaw. You're going to be very self-conscious. But no, just relax. If it's not him, it'll be somebody else. And enjoy yourself. Get to know him and let things progress the way they're meant to progress.
What I've also noticed is many people come to an age that they want to get married. So then they have this idea about what marriage should look like and who they should marry and who they're going to be in the marriage. So then they become so invested in the idea that they have in their head. And then it becomes, the process is almost like what I call 80%, 90% of the process is done. All I need to do is just 10% of finding someone who matches my ideas. And this process does not allow people to really, really investigate and be open and be present to get to know each other before they they decide to get married. And then, or when they're dating, they possibly see things that it might not be a match or that it just doesn't sit with them well. But somehow they have this fantasy that, I'll fix it. It's okay. I can handle it. And then they'll go and it's like, a year later, they're in our office. I can't handle this. I can't tolerate it. Change it. So what are your suggestions for people in that space where what should they be looking at and how they should be assessing their mate?
Okay, so you're bringing up a number of issues. One is being clear about what you want, and that is really, real important to make your list. And this in my book, Marriage Minded and A to Z, Dating Guide for Lasting Love. Under L, we have lists, and I suggest 3 lists. One is 10 qualities that you want or need in a partner, and then I help people refine the list, or you can have a friend or a therapist help you refine your list, separate what you want from what you truly need. Like, does he have to have blue eyes, or is it more important that he be kind, a kind person? So you put what's essential. And then you make your list of what you have to offer. And then you have your list also of your areas for growth. And so you realize, for one thing, that nobody's perfect. So you're going to have room to grow. He's going to have room to grow. The other point that you mentioned is a really important one. You're seeing red flags when you're saying, I'm going to change him. We already mentioned how unrealistic it is to expect somebody to change in ways, and I'll add that, ways that are habituated or character traits. Those probably are not going to change. What you see is what you get. And instead of feeling so desperate that I have to ignore everything, all the red flags, because I'm at the age now where I must get married, I have to do it quickly, have some trust that the process is going to work. If you just relax and figure, if it's not him, it'll be somebody else. And the person that I want to change is, guess who? Look in the mirror.
Yes, and I think that a lot of people at that moment, because of the fear or the investment they've already put in, it just seems like, oh, mine as well. I'm going to go in anyway. Versus, this, if it doesn't feel right at this point, either I don't have the skills and I should go seek help, and maybe I can, with the skills, I can work through this and make it work, or that we're really not a match together. And that's why we need to end it now, instead of moving and going and then having kids and then wanting to separate at that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't ignore the red flags. And so much of it is to have the confidence, to gain the confidence that if it's not him, it's not him, it'll be somebody else. The right person at the right time.
You also in your book emphasize on self-care, and not only from the awareness perspective, but also how to care for yourself. Make sure that you do through the process. You talk about the biological, psychological, social. Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh, so yeah, in the book there I have a self-care grid, and there are 4 aspects you mentioned: biological, there's social, oh gosh, I have to look at the book now. Biological, social, biological, psychological. I'm sorry, what?
Psychological and
strong blank. Spiritual, psychological, biological, and I think social is the other one. So you want to be balanced. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Socially, don't have just one person you talk to, but at least have at least one. At least one really good one, and then other friends, and then the biological. Of course, you want to bring your best self into your life and into your relationships. And psychologically, are you emotionally really well balanced? And do you have ways of relieving stress so that you can also stay shining as a happy person, and who attracts other happy people? And let's see, what's the 4th one? Biological, psychological, social, spiritual. Am I true to my religious or spiritual value system?
Wonderful. You also talk about chemistry. There's a lot of conversation around chemistry. Is chemistry something that, it just happens right at the beginning, and then if the right chemistry is there, then all is well from there, and it's just kind of like effortless, or is the chemistry something that is even necessary? What if I just decide by my mind and check mark, the portfolio and say, well, it all sounds good, and if it sounds good, then it's probably a match. What are your thoughts about chemistry?
I think chemistry is essential. I would not ignore chemistry, but it is not the be all end all. Just like feelings are really important also. We have to feel good around the person. That's really, really important. I say put your brain in charge, though, because chemistry can be hormones. You may not feel chemistry on the first or second date if you're both a little bit nervous, or something else is going on in your life or his life that's distracting you. But give it a chance. Give it at least a few dates to see if But if it's not there after a few dates, then it's probably not the right one. And it's just so much of it, though, is not letting the hormones control the whole situation, because that's not necessarily a lifelong relationship if you don't have enough similar values and good character traits and whatever else you really need for a lifelong, good, fulfilling relationship that is fulfilling in the important ways, both emotionally and spiritually, as well as physically and materially.
There's also this question of whether chemistry goes away after a while, that although it was there, really ample amount of it, it just kind of like fades away. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are, yes, that can happen, and probably happens much more often than it needs to. If people keep up with each other, that's why my first book is out there about having weekly marriage meetings, then you're going to stay connected if you communicate effectively. And so much of chemistry, really, like Masters and Johnson, the big sex experts, say that the biggest sex organ is between our ears. It's in our brains. And that's why communication is so important.
And then there's also the element of how to bring your feelings and emotions and share them, whether we are sharing the love and everything that we think that is amazing about the other person, or joy in all of it, or we're sharing our sadness or anger or fears, anxiety, and even sharing with that person, what are all the emotions that are coming up about our expectations not be met, or things that we want from them, or things that we don't like that they're doing. There's a sharing of emotions and not just our needs and wants that need to happen in a safe place. And maybe first we need to create safety for ourselves within that conversation, and then see what we can create as a safety out here. Can you share with us your wisdom on that?
I think what you just said is beautiful. To be able to share our feelings is very, very important. And again, with a filter, so that it comes out kindly and respectfully, and using the kind of positive communication skills that you have mentioned when we talked about the I statements and congruent communication. And also the timing is so important when you're both relaxed and receptive to do this.
Yes, in your book, you say there's two ways couples communicate. One is blocking each other like this, or facilitate a easier way of communicating and making a space for each other in concept of communication.
Yes, and this is why it is so important to have those skills, the communication techniques that make for this, where we have space for both people. And as I mentioned earlier, when we're single, we're kind of in a mode, or many of us are anyway, where it's all about me. And if it's all about me, there's no room for him. So the gaps are where we find ways to help be aware of both people and making space for both of us.
You also talk about friendship and how important it is to have your partner be someone who you really consider your best friend. You consider someone you feel close to, you feel safe with, you can be yourself, and whomever you can be, it can be fostered in that relationship. You make a lot of great points around friendship.
Yeah, research shows that couples who consider themselves best friends have the best, most fulfilling, happiest marriages. I was thinking, as you were saying this, that during COVID, and which unfortunately is still going on, people before it's getting, people are out more now, but when we were staying at home, so much of the time, the couples that, this is my theory, is because I say some couples got closer and it was fine being at home. Other couples, it was too stressful. And my sense is that if you're with your best friend, it's okay to be alone together, for long periods of time. And of course, if you can have separate space in your home, that's great too, because we all need that also at times. But frankly, I didn't have any issue with staying home with my husband, because I kind of like having him around.
Do you know that? Yes, you're absolutely right. That I've also sensed that when couples had issues with each other and there were a lot of dormant anger and unsatisfaction, at the time of kind of being forced to be in the same vicinity for a long time, it created much more havoc within their system. And,
right.
Either they went through the divorce, they went close to a divorce, or at least they kind of separated more, because that space of getting closer, it was just too much to handle. So they kind of went into different corners. And then the ones that the relationship was more on a positive side, they actually got closer to each other. They
Makes sense. It makes sense. If you're already angry at somebody and you're forced to be together, it's like being in a pressure cooker. So pressure's going to mount. Problems happen.
You also talk about giving compliments a lot with each other. So if
Oh, yes.
best friends, then it's also part of that expression of being in a good friendship is sharing what you like about them and constantly boosting kind of their ego and who they are, and them knowing that you like them.
Yeah, it works that way too. You're giving the compliments, makes the person very happy, but it also makes us happy. It makes us remember, with all the little ups and downs and annoyances that are part of any marriage. Basically, I really value this person and I'm glad I'm married to him. Giving the compliments reinforces that feeling in myself as well as in him.
One of the things that I've noticed with the book is written to female heterosexual who's looking for a man or is with a man. But the concepts are also very much, even if a man is looking for a woman in a heterosexual relationship, or anybody who is in a gay lesbian relationship could also relate to these as they're moving forward. The question showed up, how come you chose to only write it almost from like you're writing it to the girls or the women about their husbands or their boyfriends? Was there a particular reason why you chose that?
Okay, there's an expression that writers hear often, which is write about what you know. I know a lot about being a woman who wants to get married and has obstacles getting in her way, because that was me. I was single for a long, long time. When I told my mother, of blessed memory, that I was getting married, she said, it's a miracle. When I was at my wedding, one of my old friends said, it's a miracle. And so I had a lot to overcome. I learned a lot about dating when I was single. And I learned a lot about marriage in the 33 plus years now that I have been married. And this is a lot of what I want to share with people. Can men benefit? Can same-sex couples or same-sex oriented towards becoming a couple benefit? Absolutely, because we all deal with expectations. We all deal with attitude issues. We all deal with when's it time to make the relationship get to another level, whether it's physically or some other way. So it all does apply to men and to women and just about anybody who is looking for I'll say lifelong. I know it sounds weird these days, but that's what I wanted, and that's what I'm hoping I can help people achieve if that's what they want. People can benefit even, a lot of people these days are afraid to get married, especially if they've been hurt or I noticed that after in the 70s, age 70s, a lot of women have said, oh, I don't want to get married. Been there, done that. But I would like a committed relationship. So this similar skills without the focus on marriage, it's really what people want.
Right, and they could all of these elements in your book can be supportive of any type of a long-term relationship. It doesn't have to end to marriage, but for the people who are, married, because there's a lot of cohabitation. There's a lot of people who are even living separate, but they choose to be in long-term relationships. And they consider it a lifetime relationship, but they just choose not to be legally married nor even live with each other. Or people who are in a structure of living with each other, but still choose legally not to get married. But the points in your book are valid for any type of type of relationship, which is a romantic and intimate relationship, which is a long-term relationship in any gender and any form, because you're talking about concepts. And I think that as a human being, all of those concepts fit for all of us. Obviously, each one of those relationships might have different parameters or uniqueness to itself. And then people can, adapt these concepts to the uniqueness of their relationship.
Yeah, I think you said that well. Thank you.
You were talking about people also out of fear, maybe, or out of a loss, out of things that just isn't for them. they choose like, okay, I'm not going out. And you have a section here actually that talks about grief, of letting go of the hardships of the past relationships, or even if, someone's spouse dies and they have to go through the grief.
Very important, because if we want to bring our full best self into a relationship, we do need to, as much as we can, gain some sort of closure over a past one, so that we're not like a woman I describe it in my book who, when she meets a new man and all she can talk about is what a louse her ex was. So that's not going to be a relationship that's likely to thrive, a new one, because she's still so consumed by her former relationship with her ex-husband. Actually, I did meet this woman a couple of years after I heard her do this, and she had gotten married. So I was really happy, and she must have finished that process and looked like she had a nice marriage.
Beautiful. Yes, it has to be clean and clear here into our heart and into our mind in order for us to allow somebody else to come in fully and reside there. When we already have a resident there with somebody else, it's kind of hard to bring someone and solely be with them and even be happy in the relationship, in a sense.
Right. Yeah. We do want to come in more or less with a clean slate.
And I like this, the H, which covers happy, healing, honesty, humility, humor, and hookups. So I love every aspect of the H. It just seems like that's a little bit more of what we really want on a consistent basis throughout our relationship.
Yeah, I'm kind of focusing right now as we speak on both happy and humility, because some people think once I found him, once I've got him, I'm going to be happy. And I say, don't postpone happiness. Make yourself happy. Do things that you love doing, and be around people you enjoy, because your happiness is, first of all, very important, just as an everyday attitude, and because you'll become like a shining light that attracts other happy people. I think people that look kind of gloomy or like they don't have much going for them, what kind of people are they going to attract compared to somebody who looks confident and feeling joy in their lives? And then about humility, knowing that you don't have the answers, especially when you're dating and you feel like, oh, I have to be on my best self, and I might, I better act like I know, I'm certain about everything that I have an opinion on. That's not so attractive, even if you think it's important, and it does happen probably too much in dating. But what really, like, I'll talk very personally, one of the things my husband said he liked about me initially was that I was doing something different in my work for a while. And I said, well, I don't know if it's really going to work out, but I'm doing it. And he liked that I didn't make it like I'm this big success and whatever I do turns to gold. I think that that's something that probably does appeal to a lot of people, that we want to be able to be vulnerable, and that encourages the other person also to be honest and vulnerable.
Yes, absolutely. I think that the vulnerability brings a lot of safety for ourselves and other people, because when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, that means we created some sort of a safety net for ourselves to be able to have the courage to share. Mm-hmm. And that kind of safety also then, it extends itself to them to also have the ability to be vulnerable and not feel like they're going to be judged.
And it's also, go ahead, more.
I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay. It's also kind of a good test when you're dating, how the person does respond. Mm-hmm. If you are expressing some kind of insecurity or uncertainty, because you want a person who appreciates that rather than one who says, It's in the book. It says somebody's unemployed, and the person that she tells, she's at a party, and she tells him, and he says, well, it's too bad you don't have any skills. Yeah, too bad you don't have any skills. And then he suggests that she come over to his place for guess what?
Oh, well.
Yeah, make her feel horrible, like she has nothing going for her except hookup.
Yeah, so that's definitely a red flag for the person to
Right.
see that they're not being valued for who they are, and it takes an opportunity for them to put them down. You also talk about, which I think is very, very important, especially going from singlehood to marriage, and even within the marriage, the cycles of marriage that, long-term marriage, like you say, like you've been married for 30 years. So there's cycles that go through a marriage. And the concept of independent versus interdependent. And obviously we're going from an independent stage into an interdependent stage. But I think that this interdependent stage has so many variables in it that, people still at times fight for their independence, or they become dependent, or they're defying dependency. So there's a lot that happens within that, although a healthy relationship and a marriage does need an interdependence, the openness to be independent when it's needed, and to be independent when needed, to be dependent when needed, and to go, to be there for someone who at some point needs to be dependent. So it kind of takes all those formats.
Yes, yeah, that makes me think about the place in the book where I write about a dear friend of mine from way back from when we were in the 7th grade. We became best friends. She got married a few years before I did. I was concerned about losing my identity if I got married. And she came up with this brilliant concept. She said she thinks of her relationship with her husband as a braid with 3 strands. 3 strands. One is herself. The other is her husband, 2 independent people. And the third is the relationship. Yeah. And that's the way of recognizing, yes, I'm an independent being, he's an independent being, but a relationship means people who do often depend on each other. So that's why we have both independence and interdependence. And it doesn't have to be a power struggle if we recognize that I am still in charge of me and he is still in charge of him, and we don't try to change that.
Yes. And one of the last notion that I want to talk about, and everybody just imagine we're just talking about K. We still got the rest of the go to Z. What I just picked some of the notions up, and the last one that we have time for is, and I think is the most important factor, is the kindness.
Oh, yes.
I see so many people with all, great intentions going into marriages or even long-term relationships. And somewhere in the middle, the kindness goes away. Like the anger shows up, and it's like we can be angry and kind, but somehow the residual anger that it keeps holding on to, people their kindness toward each other. Sometimes even in simple dialogue or simple requests that they have with each other, like, can we have dinner together? Even that doesn't show up with kindness. It shows up with like a demand or an expectation, or you should have done it and you didn't, and this type of a thing. Or we question each other's intention in a way that instead of assigning even kind intention from the other person to themselves, they'll assign like horrible intentions, that she wants to do this to me, or he wants to control me and does this to me. So the concept of kindness, if we're choosing to be with each other, then choosing the concept of kindness is very important. Can you share about what you have shared in the book?
Well, one thing about kindness that I share in the book under K is for kindness, is that I have noticed that a lot of people don't include kindness in their list of traits that they want in a partner. And I agree with you, it is so important. and whether kindness stays in the marriage, if it's there initially, and whether it doesn't. So much of it has to do with intention. Of course, there's also the concept of the repetition compulsion, which means that people tend to, after a while, if not right away, fall into behaving in a pattern that resembles what they grew up with. And if they grew up with parents who did not trust each other, who were not kind to each other, who might have been repeating something that they learned from the families they grew up and so on, they start lapsing into doing what is familiar. And there is a very strange comfort in being uncomfortable because they're like this instead of like that, as we talked about. But yet, because it was in their family, that word familiar family, same kind of root, there's a strange comfort in repeating it. And when people are in therapy or some other way, they may discover what they're doing. The self-awareness, once again, is the key as the first step in changing to something that is more gratifying ultimately to themselves, because it will help the relationship along in wonderful ways.
We have about 1 minute to kind of wrap up. And is there anything we haven't said and you want to make sure that our listeners, our audience really need to know?
Okay, if I have to pick one thing, maybe I can squeeze in two, I'm not sure. No. Remember, A is for awesome, that no matter what's going around, you have wonderful qualities that you can contribute to a relationship. And when you're in them, remember to express those qualities in your thoughts and in your behaviors and in your communication in a way that values yourself and your partner and really cares deeply about both of you and the relationship that you want to build.
Wonderful. Marcia Naomi Berger, everyone. And the book is Marriage Minded, an A to Z dating guide for lasting love. And it's literally A to Z. She has gone and used every single alphabet to make a point of the concepts that are so important for the process of marriage and long-term relationship, and especially from the dating and how you choose and how you are with yourself, all the way to being a couple and keeping that couplehood happy and everlasting. Thank you so much, Naomi, for being with us.
Thank you so much again, Foojan, for having me here.
And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing world and life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye.